was a kid, all I wanted to be was a hero.
Huh? A hero? What do you mean?
You know, a hero who could save people, like in Dragon Quest.
Yakuza Like a Dragon is a first for the franchise in many ways. The first game not just starred the iconic Kiryu Kazuma in the lead role. The action brawler combat of old has been benched in favor of exaggerated turn-based JRPG system, and it's the first game in the series, excluding Judgment, to feature an English dub since the original Yakuza on PS2. Any three of these could really let the game down if implemented poorly. Thankfully, it does deliver on all fronts. The Afro-sporting leading man, Ichiban Kasuga, is, to put it simply, a fantastic protagonist. He's as charming and likable as any Yakuza protagonist to this point, if not more so. Kasuga is as determined and principled as it comes. He'll happily take a stand for what he believes in, risking his life without a second thought to protect people and look out for his friends. He's blunt, he's goofy, and he epitomizes the low intelligence, high wisdom character archetype. Combine this with excellent writing, an equally deep and enjoyable cast of characters for Kasuga to interact with, and a fantastic delivery of the English dub. I hadn't even finished the first chapter before I was in love with this wild-haired vagabond with a heart of gold. It's only gotten more pronounced since then, and I've long since stopped questioning my decision to stick with the dub. Kasuga's story begins 18 years before the narrative's key events. He's a low-level grunt for the Arakawa family, which itself is a low-level family within the Tojo clan. Nonetheless, he shares a strong rapport with the titular family patriarch. After a higher-ranked member kills a Yakuza from another family and threatens a clan war, Arakawa requests Kasuga to go to prison in place to prevent it. Driven by his loyalty to his boss, Kasuga willingly accepts and ends up serving a full 18 years. When he finally emerges, expecting to be greeted by Arakawa, he instead finds that the Yakuza world has changed dramatically in his absence. The Tojo clan is seemingly no more, having been wiped out and replaced by the Omi Alliance, and Arakawa is the traitor who let them in. Trying to find answers as to why, Kasuga ends up shot and his body dumped in the city of Yokohama, barely alive. What follows is Kasuga's struggle to find answers and meaning to his life, not to mention a means of not starving on the streets. Like the other locales in the games before it, Yokohama is dense with content and detail. The blocks and districts within are loaded with restaurants to eat at, mini-games to play, or side jobs to pick up. Yakuza Like a Dragon continues the franchise's trend of marrying the serious and stylized crime drama with borderline ridiculous sub-stories, and the selection on offer this time is pretty hefty. The game rarely keeps me waiting long before I'm grinning like an idiot. Of course, when I'm not grinning like an idiot, I'm engaging in fantastically written drama with a complex story woven amidst in-depth world building. Yokohama's underworld has its own flavor and power balance compared to Kamurocho. Learning all about this while interacting with the varied factions was a real highlight of the story thus far. When I wasn't unraveling the mystery and learning all the connections between the players on the field, I was probably at the bar, drinking with my party members and learning about their rich backstories. Whatever the tone, Kasuga's earnestness and determination are infectious and always drive the story onwards. And then moments later, he'll bust out another Dragon Quest reference and shift the moment right back to the other tonal extreme as if it was completely natural. The Dragon Quest references are quite fitting given Yakuza Like a Dragon's genre shift to JRPG. All aspects of the system are framed as Kasuga's imagination being dominated by his love for that series, to the point that even the mechanics play quite similarly. Compared to other JRPGs of the year, such as Persona 5 Royal or my personal favorite, Trails of Cold Steel 4, Yakuza Like a Dragon is somewhat simplistic. It's borrowed many of the core mechanics from Dragon Quest, sometimes to a fault. You'll gain a selection of abilities as you level up, and it's largely a choice between using those skills, regularly attacking, using items, or guarding. Enemies will have weaknesses and resistances, but beyond dictating what moves you should be using, it's largely just a fire and forget. The complexity and unique spin of the system comes mostly through its positioning. Battles take place in the streets, much like previous Yakuza games, and both allies and enemies will move around and position themselves on their own as you wait. Though you can't directly move, these positions do have an impact. Area of effect abilities can strike enemies around or between you and the target. Choosing to attack an enemy regularly may see others in their path block an attack and interrupt it. Attacking someone on the ground before they can get up will net you a guaranteed critical hit. Items or hazards on the ground might get kicked or picked up to empower attacks. A lot of effort went into making these turn-based battles have some of the energy of the Yakuza's franchise fights, albeit slower. Most of your power in battle comes from your jobs. The job system of Yakuza Like a Dragon is unlocked in Chapter 5 and lets you choose from a selection of different classes that your characters qualify for. Compared to some systems that really let you build your dream characters out of it, however, Yakuza Like a Dragon is a little bit more straightforward. Your job rank levels up separately to your character, unlocking more abilities and permanent stat boosts as you reach thresholds. Many of these skills can't be used unless the job is equipped, however. They typically have 2 character skills that can be used regardless of what class you have equipped, but it can take quite a while to get them. I found that this meant I wasn't really changing my combinations too much. Every character has their own unique class, and while these aren't specifically the best job, they did help create useful niches for the cast. Usually, I'd find 1 or 2 classes that I liked for that character, give them a few ranks each, and then settled on what seemed best. Job rank experience also takes a while to get doled out, with most of the biggest jumps coming after beating bosses. In some cases, so much so that I thought it was a balance bug. It wasn't until reaching later chapters that I really felt I could start experimenting. That said, the challenge does ramp up as the story progresses, and so eventually, I really did start considering more idealized team combinations and setups out of necessity. Better late than never, but I can't say that the system was the most engaging job system I've experienced in JRPGs. Still, this is ultimately a minor gripe. The battles themselves are still entertaining, and the way they're contextualized is frequently hilarious. Seeing how Kasuga will let his imagination run wild with enemy designs is fantastic, and really gives the game a unique charm that other JRPGs might lack. The game also isn't a pushover, with some of its enemies and bosses really making me work for a victory. Chapter 12 in particular had one boss that halted my progression for a while, and really made me reevaluate my strategy and prepare. At its worst, it's still been a game that I can't get enough of. The team's writing has continued to improve with each installment since Yakuza 0. Yakuza Like a Dragon is well on its way to letting Kasuga rub shoulders with Kiryu's greatest adventures. Still, I'd be remiss if I don't address some of the issues. Minor though as they can be. I played the PC port on a mid to high end machine, and while it was overall consistent, there were occasionally frame dips and struggles to hold a consistent frame rate. Character models and animations are largely good, but there can be some texture pop-in or degradation. All of this stuff is minor, but the battle pathfinding is much more of a nuisance. In addition to this, there were a handful of sharp difficulty spikes in Chapter 12 onwards due to seriously tough bosses. While I didn't mind the challenge, these enemies were tough enough to necessitate swapping jobs around and potentially grinding to approach their higher levels. Unfortunately, most of the fights around the world don't offer enough progress to make it worthwhile. If the battles weren't fun enough, this could turn the game into a real slog, but I was at least still enjoying myself. Even so, some number of tweaks would definitely go a long way to smoothing out later battle areas. None of this was ever enough to dissuade me from pressing on for long though. For every minor gripe or negative I came across, there was a dozen positives that I could gush about for hours. Quite frankly, I love Yakuza Like a Dragon. Everything about the heart and soul of the Yakuza series is here in full force, and the only time it ever really makes me stop smiling is to shed manly tears. Ichiban Kasuga is a fantastic protagonist, and his party is full of fascinating characters in their own right. This is a great story, a delightful open world city to play around in, and a hilariously fun recontextualization of JRPG tropes in a real world setting. It all just serves as another reminder that Ryuga Gotoku Studios are still at the top of their game, and the Yakuza franchise is still really something special. Seriously, play Yakuza Like a Dragon. If you like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to see some more great content. And of course, if you want to see some more Yakuza, you know absolutely you can keep it locked to DualShockers.